Hi, I'm Leslie Lowe. Welcome to Leslie's Lowedown on Life.
And welcome everybody to Leslie's Lowedown on Life. I want to give you a little bit of a trigger warning here because today we're going to be talking about a really heavy topic, sexual abuse. And so if you're not ready to join us, that's okay. We'll see you again next week. Today I'm joined by Amy Ebat. You're the director or the community engagement director of SRT. And what SRT provides is healing services for sexually related trauma, which is again a pretty deep subject.
Yes.
And a really difficult one to talk about. Again, SRT deals with trauma due to sexual abuse, assault, trauma due to past abortions, or trauma due to miscarriage and or stillbirth.
Yeah.
And before we get started, Amy, I looked up some statistics. 1 in 5 women in the U.S. have experienced rape in their lifetime.
Yeah.
That was such a huge number to me. It's just like a gut punch. And then just over 24% of men have experienced some form of contact sexual violence in their lifetime. And then this was the big one. 81% of women and 43% of men have experienced sexual harassment or assault in their lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are big numbers.
Huge numbers. And we like to say it's 50% of all American adults have experienced one of the 3 traumas you mentioned. So in that statistic even gets bigger. And those are the people that are just saying that they've had something done to them, if you think about it. And some of us took a long time to admit that, or even ever, if we ever do. So yeah, those statistics are massive.
I think the other thing that really got me was that I think so often we think of sexual abuse, we think about females. But it's not just women, it's men as well who are experiencing the sexual assault, the sexual violence. And I am assuming that it's more difficult for men to ask for help or reach out and talk about this.
Absolutely. And we even find with our groups, it's a little harder to fill our groups. It is a massive topic and goes deep.
It does go deep.
Goes deep and makes it really hard to, I don't know, I'm a woman, so I obviously know the woman's side of it. It's very hard to admit that something's happened to you.
So speaking of the women's side of it, you've got your own personal story.
I do.
So talk to us about your involvement in SRT, what got you there, and what drives you every day when you're showing up for these men and women?
Yeah. So what brought me to SRT, I'll start there and then I can kind of go back a little bit, I was a mom of 3 and about to have my 4th child. And and I started having children very early, 21. So I was a baby, having babies. And there was a lot of things that were coming up as I was raising my children, and emotions that I just didn't know how to deal with. Anger was a really big one. I find myself angry at my own children for no reason, infant, and just not knowing where this anger was coming from. And I knew, so my recovery or healing from my trauma really started with my first child going, what happened? This infant just completely wrecked my, quote unquote, wrecked my world. And just knowing something was there, not really knowing what. Lots of other things were going on. I was very terrified to be left home alone. Like when my husband had to go back to work after I had a baby, I was terrified. All of it, obviously being a new mom, that's scary. Being pregnant, having a child, all of that was scary, but it just felt overwhelmingly too much. There came a point I started working through my story. Someone finally asked me just to tell my story to them. And for the first time, I was able to say it. And I felt a sense of relief just in that moment of telling them my story. And that really started this oh, this goes much deeper than just this happened to me and I made it through it. And it was kind of a wound I would wear proudly in a way. Yeah, I had been abused, but I came through it. But I had never dealt with the emotions and the symptoms really of the trauma until it really was in my face. And so fast forward to baby number 4, I had been dealing with this, and again, these same things started coming up. And when I say dealing with this, I mean I had gone through some counseling and decided to take a break. It started to relieve. All of life felt a little easier to handle, and so I just kind of stepped away from counseling and all the things.
Do you mind if I back up a little
Yeah,
bit for a second?
absolutely.
And you talk about you wore it proudly.
Mm.
What did you wear proudly?
I think the fact that I made it through it, that I'm on the other side. So my story was when I was 9 years old, someone broke into my house who I did not know and molested me. And then that sent me on a totally different trajectory of life, I believe, than I would have probably had that not happened. I became very promiscuous, very curious about something that I really didn't know anything about, but then was introduced to without wanting to be. I became very curious and started sneaking out and just pursuing at a very young age relationships and trying to fill this hole that was taken or I don't know, what I felt was empty. And into high school, I started to, at a very young age, I picked up drugs at 13, and I got in a relationship with a boy that was 18. And then at that point, I lost my virginity, and he was abusive, sexually abusive, mentally abusive. And I did not know at 13 how to put a stop to any of that. And I really thought, well, this is kind of what I'm worth, because what happened to me really damaged me, and I'm damaged goods. And that's really what I thought, that for a very long time. And as I went through high school, I had some incidences. I had 2 different incidences of date rape, freshman year and junior year. And I think just graduating and moving, I'm from Montana, moving to Spokane, I felt like I had made it through the war, and I got out. I made it through. And none of this was done by my family, which I sit in the 17% that doesn't know their abuser. I still don't know who the date rape was, but I didn't know the person that broke into my house. 83% of people know the person.
Which is so painful. It's
Yeah.
all painful.
It's all painful.
I mean, there's
absolutely,
yeah.
but I can't imagine knowing the person. But I so I came here and just felt like I'm starting my life. I'm strong. I've been through a lot. I had been through a lot, because along with that, you lose self-worth, you self-confidence, and you kind of let other people control you.
I was going to say, I would imagine being molested at the age of 9, not knowing your assaulter, and then
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of sets you up. And tell me if I'm wrong, for not knowing how to set boundaries.
Oh, absolutely. I was thinking through that and trying to think about how to word that. Like, walls came down that I didn't know were needed. You know, I found myself in positions that were like, how did I get here? Well, I didn't know how to protect myself, and I really thought I could. I really thought I was in control of me, and that's part of, I think, that we get wrong, is we feel like we're in control of ourselves, but then we still find ourselves in these positions again and again. And I think not knowing how to set the boundaries was really, it just made it really hard. Well, really hard to set boundaries, obviously.
Right. Do you feel like because you were attacked, you were assaulted in your home, that there wasn't anybody there to protect you? So do you think maybe in your own mind you thought, oh, well, then I don't deserve to be protected?
God, oh yeah, there's lots of stuff that goes through your head. And maybe I didn't deserve to be protected, or I'm going to be the only one that can protect me. I am my protector, right? And when for me, my parents were home, they just slept through it. And because he was quiet and he snuck up the stairs, and then they did wake up. He fell down the stairs as he was leaving, and they woke up and chased him. And as a parent now, I realize I won't always be there for my kids. Like, I cannot be there every moment. And I think this natural instinct to just protect yourself, I am my own protector, kicked in. And I mean, my parents didn't know what I was doing. I was sneaking out after that. I was, got really curious about the world. It opened this door of like, what else is out there that I don't know about? And I had to go find it, but wasn't protected in it at all.
So you talk about the date rape. Were those situations that you found yourself in because of alcohol or drugs?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And so at 13, I started smoking pot, and continued that all through high school, and started drinking. And that was really what numbed all of it. I mean, I still continued to go to school. I lived this double life because I really wanted to be perfect. I really wanted to be popular and all the things. So I tried really hard to keep that life in check, right? Like, I went to school, I kept up my grades, I was a cheerleader. But when all of that was done, I'd go and I'd do my drugs, and I'd go and drink until really late hours of the night. And on the weekends, that's what I was doing. And going to parties and finding myself with the wrong person or people I didn't know. And that's how it happened.
And then wanting people to like you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Looking for love and approval the whole time. Because something was taken at that young age. You feel like everybody knows, really. And so you have to prove that you're not what they think you are. But then you still end up being very, for me, I ended up being very promiscuous. And I don't think that would have happened had I not been molested at 9.
So when you started to have these feelings, when you had your children, what started to come up? What started to bubble up for you?
Fear, a lot of fear, anxiety, and just not knowing how to raise my kids. And that goes into just not feeling like I was prepared in a lot of ways. I just ran after high school. And I think for me, I knew I was a mess. How am I going to raise these kids? I'm a mess inside. And so going on my 4th, it was like I had been trying really hard to work on myself, but I could only do so much, if that makes sense. And then I had my 4th, and more things started coming up. Anxiety, I started getting panic attacks, which was really abnormal for me because fear hadn't really been something I would say I identified with, because I lived a really risky life and like to do some scary things. But it really did. It got so to the point where I felt like it was suffocating me, the fear, and I couldn't figure out what I was so terrified of. Well, I'm afraid to raise my kids in the world that I know it is, of abusers out there that we're not always safe from, or whatever. That's what I was thinking in the back of my head. Somebody finally sat me down and said, "Hey, have you ever tried going to a group to talk about it?" I said, "I didn't know there were groups. Like, I know there's AA, and I'm not going to do that." At that point, I had stopped drinking, stopped smoking. I married, and actually got into church, and my husband was a pastor. So my life was very different, but the symptoms were still there of all of that. No self-worth, insecure, and a lot of fear, like I said. So I decided to go ahead and try this group. It was terrifying. It was,
I can imagine,
one of the scariest things that I've done.
Did you sit there for a few times and just listen, or did you jump
yeah.
right in?
I jumped right in, and part of that is I've been telling my story at that point I had been already sharing it with like youth groups, or not in crazy detail, but just where I had been and where I'd come from. So it wasn't too hard to share that, but I had never shared the date rape. Actually, I went ahead and told my story, and I said, I found myself in a bathroom, woke up and didn't know where I was, and went through my story, and they were the first ones to tell me, that's rape, right? And I sat there for a while and just, yeah, I guess it is. I didn't consent. I woke up with not wanting to be there, all of it. Yeah. Oh, and so that was the first time I didn't put a name on those incidents
And
in
you
high school.
probably and just being a female and kind of relating to some of your story, you push that stuff down.
Well,
And there's
yeah.
an enormous amount of shame that goes along. Shame is it's so,
Oh, yeah.
it runs so deep, and it really controls and manipulates how you think and how you
Yes.
feel and how you blame yourself. And like you said, they had to tell you that's rape. And you're
Yeah.
like, but wait. Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shame. I'm so glad you said that, because that is definitely probably the emotion that I felt the most, was shame and guilt. I, for some reason, thought I was guilty. Like I did something wrong. Even in high school, it was, well, maybe I dressed wrong. I was in the wrong environment. I didn't say no. I was drinking. I had all these excuses of why it was my fault. So shame and guilt were huge. And I thought everybody knew. Really, I thought it was like, it was just I was just so ashamed of who I was and what had happened to me. That is very true. And so going into this group, having to tell everyone what I did, because we share our stories in that group. It was the first time not the first time, but I had told it my story earlier, and someone met me with just acceptance and non-judgment, and I didn't feel shame in that moment. And then this time, being able to tell people who have very similar stories, there was no shame in telling them. It was like they just received my story so well and held it with so much honor that they cried for me. They felt the emotions that I had been stuffing down for a really long time. That I was
It's like taking shackles off.
Absolutely, it is. Yes. Yes. And I sat in the parking lot for a while to talk myself into walking myself in there, till finally I did. And honestly, by the end of those 8 weeks, I work here now, so I loved it. Those women became my sisters in arms, because they've been through the same thing, very similar things. We related. A lot of what they said, it was like, I have felt that my whole life. I have felt shame and dirty my whole life. You too? Oh, you too? Wow, I'm not alone.
Right.
Yeah, it was amazing.
When I listen to you, I'm thinking it's like you let all of that guilt and that shame just kind of fall away, and you start to figure out who you are again.
Yeah. Yes, and that's exactly it. I think a sexual abuse and assault for me took my identity. It totally stole who I was and created this different Amy that wasn't, I like to call her the old Amy now, that wasn't really me. It changes you.
It does. But you build walls.
Yeah.
You create these incredibly strong, tall walls around yourself.
Yep.
So that you can keep people out.
Yeah. You make vows.
Yeah.
I will never do that again. I will never be around this again. I will, you pieces of you. Also, it feels like pieces of you get shut off. I am quite bubbly and I love people, and it got to a point where I didn't want to be around people, and I couldn't explain why. It just was, I felt like I was bringing something so shameful and so scary to the table that most people would think was too much. Not that I always have to talk about it. I don't always,
Right.
but it just felt like it, like they knew. That shame that I carry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's heavy. Shame is a very heavy thing. And, just thinking back to those numbers that, we were talking about how many men and women have actually been abused or have, experienced some kind of sexual trauma or assault in whatever environment it is, then it's interesting that we put so much on ourselves thinking we're the only ones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We did this. We like to kind of put a picture to what we talk about, and we do this. Well, I like to say when you're in a grocery store and you're in the line, there's a good chance that half of the people you're in line with have experienced this, right? Because we say 50% of the adults. That's adults. We're not even talking about kids, which that's a whole nother statistic. But when I'm in a grocery store, half of the adults there have had one of these traumas. That's a lot.
That's overwhelming.
Millions of people. Millions. And we're here thinking we're the only ones.
So what would you say to somebody that's watching right now that is carrying around that guilt and that shame and that
Yeah.
dirty all over feeling that they're alone and somehow they deserved this? What do you tell them?
You didn't deserve it, first of all. It should have never happened to you. And I'm so sorry it did. I think one of the things that I try to remind people is if you're out of it, you've been through the worst. Now it's time to get the freedom that you deserve from this. And I think it's terrifying to think of sharing your story. And I know that that's one of the first steps to becoming free from that trauma. And you are worth so much more than you went through.
And it's a process.
It is a process. It is a process. Yeah. That you can't work through unless you start. And starting is hard. That's one of the biggest steps is just dipping your toes into healing from your own past.
What would you tell somebody, or how would you help somebody form a relationship with someone who has been through this kind of trauma? Because that's also difficult. Relationships are difficult after something like that.
Yeah, I think for me, even working in this world, I've come to realize that a lot of how people treat other people even isn't always personal, that there's something much deeper going on. And so I think for me, as I'm going into relationships, I remember I have to be very patient and I have to listen, because there are usually things that they'll say that if you keep listening, you can pick up on that they've been through something really hard. And there's probably a reason they're acting the way they're acting. Or, for me, for a while, it felt like my life was just pure chaos. And I'm so glad that I had friends that stuck with me, even though my life was chaos. Because it does get chaotic for a while. It does get really hard. So I think if you're trying to support someone that's going through this, just know there's ups and downs like crazy. And there are going to be times when it's really hard, and it's really hard for them just to do life. We do a podcast. It's called Grace and Grenades. And the reason we started it was just because when I was going through healing, and when Rachel, my co-host, was going through healing, both of us felt like it would have been really nice for somebody just to say, this is normal, that you don't want to get out of bed today and don't want to do your laundry, that you have to parent from the couch. This is normal, because this process takes so much out of you.
It's one of those things where it's like you build up these walls and then you're trying to tear them down.
Mm-hmm.
And then something happens and it shakes your trust.
Yeah.
And you build the walls back up again.
Yeah.
And then you try to tear the walls back down.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting at times.
It is. And learning how to protect your heart, that's a whole nother healing process. I feel like where to put the boundaries, how to see the red flags, how to really stop these unhealthy coping skills that we all tend to form. And sometimes one of those is getting into relationships that are similar to the last, right? That abusive cycle. And I think as we start processing and healing, we kind of start to see our cycles and go, oh, yeah, that's not healthy. I really need to change that a little bit and do that differently. But life is going to be life, and it's going to hit us, and it's going to continue to hit us hard. So I still will be like, something will trigger something, and I have to process through it again, or I have to process through a new memory, because it was years of different situations where I found myself in scary situations that I've blacked out or repressed. And so the healing process is a long journey and can't be done all at once.
I do think trauma is one of those things that things slowly will come out. And like
Yeah.
you said, out of nowhere, it just kind of hits you and you've got to deal with that. And I'm just,
Yeah.
thinking having the tools to be able to go, okay, this is what this is.
Yes, exactly. And I think as we start going through our own story, we're able to go back and go, oh, that's where this started. That's where this comes from. Somebody saying that then, and I've carried that through my whole life, or somebody doing this to me and I've blocked off, put up a wall here my whole life. And it's such a process. It's a good one though. It's hard, and sometimes it feels like you're just gonna crumble in the weight of what you're going through.
And sometimes you do.
You do.
And sometimes you just do.
Yes.
And it's not how many times you fall, it's how many times you just
Yes.
get back up again.
Yes, and I think that's one of the things that we're here for. Like,
Mhm.
that's what SRT is here for. We're here to help you get back up. We're here to go with you through the ups and downs and help you connect dots and start this process of healing, or continue it wherever you're at in it. We just knew that, well, we know we cannot do it alone. And I think that's one of the things I've learned the most out of going through my story is trying to process it alone was really hard, and it only got me so far. I need other people. I need other people to support me, to encourage me, to ask me good questions, to see me when I'm crumbling, to see me when I'm have things to celebrate. I need it all. I really need the support, and that's where we come in for SRT Services. Is we can be that support.
So there is support out there. And I know a lot of people do feel alone and they don't think that there is anything available for
Right.
them. And again, the shame keeps them
Yes,
from
yes.
even looking. But there are resources available.
Yes.
And Amy, before I let you go, just could you give us some of those red flags that we should be looking out for, not only ourselves, but for our children?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, and you can probably find quite a bit. Even on our own website, we have some references, but it really depends on what we're talking about. So are we talking about relationships, or are we talking about keeping our children safe? Because there's a lot when it comes to keeping our children
That's
safe.
so true.
As far as even from internet to, and there are some amazing organizations as well that will help us find and know all these different red flags for children, because we primarily work with adults. But is the person you're with safe, and are they asking you to do things that you don't feel comfortable with? And are they saying things like, well, nobody else is going to love you? Or I know for me it was the person really wanted to quiet my own voice, and so it was a lot of, well, you're just not smart enough to know that, really trying to make me feel like I was less than, like I didn't have the intelligence to know, like they knew so much more. And that control that ended up happening because of that for him. He controlled how I dressed, the things I said. Now, looking back, I have a daughter that's 11, and if there was anybody who told her she couldn't dress a certain way or to speak a certain way, or that would be a red flag to me of maybe that's not a safe person to be with. I'm trying to think of more red flags.
Oh, and it's okay. I kind of put you on the spot right there. I mean, there are so many, and it really does depend on whether we're talking about an adult in a relationship or
Yeah.
watching out for your children. Because I know as a mom myself, we look out for all of the things, but it's easy to miss sometimes.
Oh, it is. And that's part of why I have a really hard time like blaming my parents for, the lack of safety. Just now as a parent, realizing I can't always be there, but we can talk to our children. And I think that's one of the main things is making sure they know the red flags. They know the signs. I mean, we've heard the big thing right now is sextortion from text messaging and getting on social media. That's something that's happening all over the United States right now with young kids that
I feel like that's a whole other podcast.
That
and that's
is,
just like,
but-
wow.
But there are definitely places that can help with helping you find what these red flags are for our kids. And then for us, I think there's a lot. It really depends on the world you're in. I'm doing a group currently. I'm facilitating a group, and there's just so many times that I want to go back into these people's story and rip apart some people. But just knowing that when somebody offers you something, there's probably something tied to that you quote unquote will have to owe them. That's a big one. Is being baited into sexual acts and then being blackmailed for them, or that's a big one here, everywhere, really. And if you don't have any self-confidence or worth at that point, then you just go with it. And I think really, really needing to know where you're going to draw the lines and really be a good boundary setter. And that's something we also walk through in our groups is what are good boundaries. And we do talk about some red flags. And it's to each individual story. We're able to go, okay, do you see some signs in your own story that you could now go back and go, oh, that could have been a red flag, and that could have been, and moving forward, this could be a red flag. But I can't come up with any right now for some reason in particular.
Okay. There are just so many different tentacles to this subject. And I was alarmed when I looked at the numbers, and it's heartbreaking. And now when we introduce social media into all of it, it really does make things even more complicated. Back in my day, it was just the parties and the drugs and the alcohol that kind of complicated things. Now we've got the parties and the drugs and the alcohol and the social media piece of it. So it's just such an open door.
It really is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much, Amy, for being here today and being vulnerable enough to talk about your story, because that allows other people to go, okay, it's not just me.
Yeah.
And you're not alone.
Yeah.
And SRT does provide services.
We do.
And if you need help, reach out for help.
Yeah. And we provide services real quick for men as well.
Which I do want to tell you before. Okay, I was going to let you go. But before we go, men, and we talked about it at the very beginning, have a much more difficult time talking about this and or even reaching out for help, or even feeling like they have a valid fear or complaint or whatever it might be, because it doesn't happen to men,
right?
Which isn't true.
No, it's not true at all. And thankfully we were able to provide groups for men for sexual abuse and assault and past abortion as well, if they have that in their story. And I think I don't know, it's really hard for a man to I assume, to admit when you're supposed to be the man, right? Like you're supposed to have this strength to you that we look for in men. And when that is felt like taken away from you, then you feel like you're fake, right? Something was taken from me. I don't even know what a man looks like. I could imagine that this is some of the things that they're wrestling through, just like us. If something like me, my identity was totally put on the line and completely confused. I was confused of who I was. And I would imagine that happens to men too.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, that conversation, right? They're not going to believe me. This doesn't happen to
Yeah.
men. And I've heard that story before from men who have been abused or assaulted.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult place because the man has got this different, there's a different stigma around
Right.
men.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for insight, for sharing your story, for providing a place for people to go to heal. It's so important.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you, everybody. And again, if you need help, reach out for help. You deserve it. It's going to be a road, but you got this. Go make the rest of your days the best of your days.